ta chevelure profonde aux acres parfums. Sur ta chevelure profonde.
The best thing and the worst thing about being a movie buff is knowing that you haven't seen everything. It doesn't matter how much time you spend sitting in the dark watching some electric shadows on a wall. There are going to be vast areas of cinema about which you know nothing. This is a bad thing because you want to know everything, but it's a good thing because at some stage you are going to see things you haven't seen before, and they're going to delight you because you're seeing them for the first time. But here's the thing, you're not necessarily going to find them on a streaming service. The really good stuff isn't necessarily on Netflix or Stan or Tubi or Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Apple Plus, Hulu, ABC iView or SBS On Demand. You're going to have to look at some discs. And that's okay too, because sometimes the fishing is as much fun as cooking the fish. On that note, here are my favourite first-time movie watches for 2019, and I had a really, really good year. Any year where you can enjoy 5 Kurosawa Akira movies for the first time is a better year than one when you don't. Bonus points because all of these movies star Mifune Toshiro. And if you don't know who that guy is, you're in for a treat. The Quadrille is a hidden gem of a film. Mifune stars as a doctor who, due to an accident during wartime surgery, is infected with syphilis from a patient. Treatment in Japan at the time meant about a decade of injections and blood tests. After the war, the doctor opens a surgery in a poor area of Tokyo, and as the years pass, he has to deal with the consequences of that accident, both personally and professionally. Comparing this movie with the heavily censored output of Hollywood in the 1940s, the adult subject matter and the mastery of setting, character and plot that Kurosawa shows makes The Quadrille even more impressive. Made 4 years after the end of World War II, this one shows the consequences of Japan's imperialist aggressions in the 30s and 40s in a very personal and fascinating story. The next 4 Kurosawa movies I'm going to brush over fairly lightly because I already did a video about them, which I'll link in the show notes. The Hidden Fortress you should check out because this is the original gangster of Star Wars. George Lucas admitted the influence of this film on his first Star Wars film. 2 amoral peasants get involved with warring clans in feudal Japan and meet a fearsome military general played by Mifune and a gutsy adventurous princess played by Uhara Misa. This movie has adventure, comedy, great battle scenes and vivid and engaging characters. I cop a lot of crap for saying that this is a better action film than Star Wars, but it is. Find a copy of The Hidden Fortress and watch it with your friends. Rashomon is a monumental piece of cinema. It's a classic of the genre. It's a movie of depth and complexity. It's a courtroom drama. It's a drama of medieval Japan, and it has the same story told by different narrators, until finally we reach the truth of what happened in a forest when a samurai is killed and his wife is assaulted. If you ever see a list of the 50 best movies ever made and Rashomon isn't on it, ignore what the person says. They don't know what they're talking about. Yojimbo and Sanjuro are 2 Jidaigeki samurai movies where Mifune plays a wandering ronin, a masterless samurai. From these 2 movies, the seeds of the genre we know as spaghetti westerns grew. Yojimbo has the samurai encountering a lawless village where 2 gangs battle for control of the town. The ronin plays one off against the other until finally both are destroyed. In Sanjuro, he helps a group of naive young samurai deal with graft and corruption. The samurai believe that the Lord Chamberlain, their master, is corrupt and have reported him to the superintendent. But the truth is not what they think it is, and by reporting him, they have put themselves, their families and communities in great danger. In both of these movies, the moral lesson is never underestimate the quiet man in the corner. They're great adventure movies with lively characters and a psychological complexity than you won't see in a lot of modern action cinema. Dino Risi's movie Il Paso is one that friends had told me about for a long time. People were saying to me, watch this movie, you'll love it. And when I finally got a copy, sure enough, I did. This is one of the great road movies of all time. During a summer national holiday, Roberto, played by Jean-Louis Trintignant, and Bruno, played by Vittorio Gassman, meet and go on an impromptu road trip along the Via Aurelia in Bruno's sports car. On the journey, both of them confront their past and they contemplate their futures. This movie reflects a lot of the post-war changes in Italian society, including a shift from an almost feudal rural existence to urban living. It also looks at ideas of masculinity in a changing society. It's got great music, great locations, and superb acting, including Luciana Angiolillo as Bruno's ex-wife. The ending of the movie is a surprise, but it works in the context of the story. Also, Paso has the same stylish Italian vibe as movies like La Dolce Vita and 2 Weeks in Another Town, and I'm always a sucker for that kind of stuff. This is the one really good movie that Dino Risi directed, and you should check it out. This next one's a little bit of a fudge because it's only from 2018. It's set in Mexico City in 1971, and it's the story of Cleo, a young indigenous woman who's a servant for a wealthier family. She's played by Yalitza Aparicio, and she is extraordinary as Cleo, who navigates all the changes in her life and civil unrest within Mexico at the time with a bravery and endurance that really stays with you. Alfonso Cuarón's direction is full of long takes that let the audience reflect on the events we're witnessing, and that gives us a documentary realism to the film that impressed me. I'm not always a fan of art house films, but this one works on so many levels that it's one of those films that stays with you for weeks after you see it. Rip Torn plays Maury Dan, a touring country singer with a following across the South. Payday tells the story of 36 hours in Maury's life as he tours around, drinks, takes drugs, and screws his way across the South. Anna Capri is great as his girlfriend Maylene. This is Rip Torn's best movie role. And the movie, directed by Daryl Duke, keenly observes the 1970s rural American South with an unflinching eye on the ugliness of empowered toxic masculinity. This one wasn't made by a big studio. When people talk about the great films of the 1970s, it never gets a mention, but you should check it out because it really does give us something different, and its unflinching eye on the nature of celebrity is meaningful even today. Gunman's Walk is a good companion piece to Payday. This western, directed by Phil Carlson, was one of the movies that Quentin Tarantino recommended based on the kind of movie his Once Upon a Time in Hollywood character Rick Dalton would have been part of. Van Heflin, a character actor whose work I really like, is Lee Hackett, a rancher who was the toughest man in the territory a generation ago. He has 2 sons, Davey, played by James Darren, who is sensitive and civilized, and Ed, played by Tab Hunter, who's wild, random and dangerous. When Ed kills a First Nations ranch hand, Lee Hackett has to confront both his son and his legacy. The final scenes in this movie really resonated for me. It's still a B-grade western, but it's one that's got both a heart and a mind, and I really appreciated that. This is another movie I've already done a video about. Dario Argento's vividly colourful but thematically dark movie about a dancer played by Jessica Harper who enrolls in a German dance academy with evil secrets. It is a hybrid of horror movies and giallo films. Giallo doesn't normally have supernatural horror in it, but Suspiria does. There are some bravura set pieces in here, including one set in a town square, which is a masterclass on how to misdirect the audience's attention before slamming them with an unexpected twist. Ignore the remake, and as always, go for the original version. You won't be sorry. Lola and Model Shop are 2 movies set on 2 different continents 8 years apart, made by the same director with the same star playing the same character. Jacques Demy did this a lot in his movies, giving characters an encore, putting characters from previous movies into later movies, not always as a viewpoint character, but as an important part of the film. In Lola, the wonderful Anouk Aimée plays Cecile, also known as Lola, who works in a cabaret in Nantes. Roland, a listless young man played by Marc Michel, is infatuated with Lola, who's a single mother who's kind and gentle with all the men who want to sleep with her. Like Roland, she's pining for a lost love, with whom she eventually reunites.
C'est moi, c'est Lola.
8 years later in Los Angeles, Cecile is single again, her husband having run away with a character played in a different movie, Bay of Angels, by Jean Moreau. I told you Jacques Demy recycles characters. Cecile is working as a photographic model in a sleazy model shop. She meets another listless young man, George, played by Gary Lockwood, who also becomes infatuated with her. Model shop was another one of the inspirations for Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's easy to imagine Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth living in the same world as George and Lola. I'm an enormous fan of Jacques Demy's work, and it was great to add another 2 of his movies to my viewed and enjoyed list. Then I moved over and watched a movie directed by Jacques Demy's wife Agnes Varda. This one was a revelation for me. Varda gives us 2 hours in the life of Cleo, whose name is also Florence, a beautiful young pop singer in Paris. Cleo wanders Paris, rehearses with her songwriting friends, and visits other friends and family while waiting for a doctor's appointment to find out whether she has cancer. As the 2 hours pass, Cleo sheds her shallow, pretty facade, and we see a woman discovering what's really important to her. She gets rid of a shallow, selfish, older lover and meets a new man, a potential romantic partner in a park. Karim Marchand, who also had a small role in Jacques Demy's Lola, is fascinating as Cleo. Her character evolves as our understanding of her and her situation evolves. There's magic in this movie. We also get a cameo by one of my favourite movie composers, Michel Legrand, so there's no downside here. With the exception of one small portion at the start, it's filmed in black and white on the streets of Paris. And for 2020, I'm definitely going to be watching a lot more of Agnes Varda's movies. This one's definitely moving up my list of favourite films at a rapid pace. Finally, a documentary from 2017. For almost a century, Hollywood sold the world a pack of lies about the stars. Their names, their biographies, and even their faces were changed to sell an idealised, mainstream image of Tinseltown. The true story of mid-20th century Hollywood was buried under this mountain of self-serving bullshit. In 2012, that myth was blown away with Scotty Bowers' book, Full Service, My Adventures in Hollywood and the Secret Sex Lives of the Stars. Bowers was a World War II Marine veteran who after the war became a sex worker and an unpaid pimp to the stars of Hollywood. Scotty's tell-all memoir caused a storm among movie historians at the time. When the dust settled, the consensus of opinion was that Scotty was telling the truth. The documentary about him, Scotty and the Secret History of Hollywood, follows him around as a 90-year-old man as he goes about his day. It delves into his history and his then current life. Scotty died in October 2019. The documentary doesn't shy away from asking questions about Scotty's early life, which included a fair bit of sexual abuse, the psychological damage of which Scotty remained in denial about. Always optimistic and openly pansexual, Scotty Bowers was a fascinating character in Hollywood history, and the documentary gives us a glimpse of the man behind that book. So they're just some of my favourite first-time watches for 2019. I think I'll be doing this every year because it's really useful to go back over the year and just see how your taste in films changes because of the films you see over a year. And it will, inevitably. The more movies you watch, the more your taste is going to change and evolve. And that's kind of cool. Get out of your comfort zone. Watch the stuff you wouldn't normally watch. Take recommendations from people, including me if you want to, but buyer beware. There's a lot of really good cinema out there for you to explore and enjoy and discover and then pass on to other people as well. Every year is a new adventure. So that's about it for this time around. I hope you have a terrific holiday season. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, stay warm. If you're down here, stay cool. It'd be really nice if we all made a little bit of an agreement to watch movies we wouldn't normally watch in 2020. That'll be a great adventure for the lot of us. Tell me what your favourite first-time views were for 2019. I'd be really interested. They're not going to be the same as mine. And I may well find some films that I haven't seen before, in which case, thank you very much. Take care of yourselves.